Please welcome our first speaker, James Walsh, from the Sporting Shooters Association.
Thank you, Senator. I want you all to imagine sitting at home with your family, enjoying your morning coffee when all of a sudden there's a knock at the door. You open the door to be met by three armed police who request to enter your home and demand to inspect specific items of your personal property. You tell the police that this intrusion is not a convenient time, to which they ask you why. What else have you got to do? It's not going to take long. You feel intimidated by their show of force as they rattle off their understanding of what they are permitted to do, which in turn makes you feel compelled to oblige their request. They also have a list of items that they tell you to produce to inspect individually by serial number to ensure that their records of your personal property are correct. You may be asking yourselves why you deserve this treatment. They have no right to enter my home. I've done nothing wrong. Why are the police demanding to inspect my personal property? What business is it of theirs what I own? The answer to all of these questions is that you are simply a law-abiding citizen and you've actually done nothing wrong. Why are the police demanding to inspect my personal property? What business is it of theirs what I own? I already said that, didn't I? Sorry, I apologise.
Say it again.
I did, yeah. You're applying with the law, and as such that makes you a target. The scene that I describe would be better suited to a communist-era 1950s movie, along with the line, "Can I see your papers?" The fact is it takes place in Australia every day. It's a common occurrence where police can show up to people's homes and demand to inspect their property without warrant. Welcome to the life of a law-abiding firearms owner within Australia. A life where you must open your house and personal property for inspection on demand and where the government keeps track of the property you own. Today I want to give you an insight into what it's like to be a law-abiding firearms owner and a brief introduction to the rigmarole and endless regulation and red tape that you must navigate and comply with in order to keep your licence and firearms. The scenario I just mentioned happened to me a few years ago. The police showed up unannounced, demanding to inspect my firearms safe storage. As I said, I advised the police it wasn't a convenient time, but that only led to them becoming pushier and pushier. I thought to myself, after all, I'm a law-abiding citizen with nothing to hide. As the inspection went on, I kept feeling if I didn't comply with the request of the police, I may be seen to be causing trouble. I was definitely under the microscope and they were looking at me very closely, trying to catch me out. In order to obtain a firearms licence, a person must be of exceptional character. They must not have been convicted of an offence involving drugs or violence, major fraud or crimes of a sexual nature. They must not have been the subject of an AVO or DVO within 10 years. They must be upstanding citizens and not associate with known criminals. Yet in many instances, despite proving their character, licensed shooters are treated no better than common criminals. Once you are the holder of a firearms licence, in the eyes of the government, it only opens you up to further scrutiny. I have often said I feel safest in a room full of licensed shooters. I know that in order to have a firearms licence, you must go through thorough police checks and be found to be a model citizen. After all, what other job or recreation requires the same level of purity? You would think that once you have been through the red tape and scrutiny required to obtain a firearms licence, plus the compulsory firearms assessment and testing, that you would be free to go about your business. But no, it's actually just the beginning. Here starts the real journey of regulation and bureaucracy gone crazy. It is now where you must start to justify why you want a firearm, what you need or want that type of firearm for, what you intend to do with it, and where and how it will be stored. If you give an answer or reason to any of those questions that the bureaucrats deem unsatisfactory, you are either subject to further scrutiny or denied your permit application for which you've already paid a non-refundable fee. It's important to note that people take up shooting for a number of reasons. The government mandates that a person must establish a genuine need for firearms licence and then a further genuine need or reason to purchase each and every firearm. You may want a firearm for the challenge of target shooting, where you are required to shoot the smallest grouping of 3 shots at a target some 200 metres away. It may be that you prefer to ethically hunt your food that is free, range and organic. The reason of "I just want one" is not good enough, and each reason opens up more regulation and obligatory requirements for the licensed shooter. Take, for example, using a genuine reason of hunting. Most countries regard hunting as a basic cultural tradition and would not question firearms ownership to put food on the table. Not in Australia. A licensed firearm owner is subject to a number of conditions to keep their licence and firearms, which include a requirement to shoot at a range a specified number of times in a year, compulsory membership of a hunting or target shooting club that meets the requirement of the licence type, and even having to obtain letters from rural property owners stating that you have permission to hunt vermin on their property. If for some reason these conditions cannot be met, the shooter must then explain themselves further and provide evidence of reasons for non-compliance, or again risk the loss of their licence and firearms. For each and every firearm you want to buy, you must complete another permit to acquire, pay the required fee and justify the need for it. However, shooting is a lot like golf. In golf, you use a number of clubs depending on the distance or purpose of the shot. In shooting, a hunter or competitive shooter may require several different firearms to get the job done. An example is you may require a shotgun for pest birds or foxes at close range, a larger calibre rifle for bigger pest species like pigs or deer over longer distances, a small calibre rifle for rabbits. Each and every firearm you want to purchase comes with a requirement to prove a genuine reason and pay an additional permit to acquire fee. After the Port Arthur massacre in 1996, John Howard introduced some of the strictest firearms laws in the world, and with it an effective blanket ban on some types of firearms, like those with a semi-automatic action. He also imposed more restrictive regulation of common firearms as well. For pistol shooters who were already incredibly tightly regulated, nothing over .38 calibre was now permitted, unless you are a police officer, of course, and magazines are no longer permitted to hold more than 10 rounds. Rifles are also subject to a maximum magazine capacity of 10, although the other limitations make that a little bit academic at times. None of this was done in a fact-based manner. It was based on a motive argument, and if you try to find a thread of reason through all the restrictions, you will only succeed if you are really ignorant about guns. There just isn't one. Even farmers face unreasonable restrictions despite the fact that even the Greens acknowledge their need to own firearms. Farmers can obtain a special permit for a single semi-automatic rifle with a capacity of no more than 10, but they can't have a second one in case the first one breaks, and they can't have a small calibre rifle for rabbits and a larger calibre rifle for pigs. For sporting shooters, the rules were extremely limiting. The ban on semi-automatics meant that popular events like 3-gun, a competition that uses pistol, shotgun and semi-automatic rifle, ceased. Australians now have to travel to countries like New Zealand to practice and partake in these competitions where these types of firearms are permitted. But the regulation of firearms didn't stop in 1996. More recently, we have had another example of the government restricting common firearm types. I'm sure you have all heard about the very public debate over the Adler shotgun. The Adler lever-action shotgun was marketed as a game changer and made out to be a fast-firing, powerful firearm that hadn't been seen in the Australian market before. The truth to this is it is just marketing spin. Lever-action shotguns of various brands have been available in Australia for 150 years. There have been no reports of these firearms being used in any crimes. Yet the government has now decided that lever-action shotguns with a magazine capacity over 5 shots should now be moved into the most restrictive firearm category, the same as semi-automatic firearms. For what? Because the government says that 5 shots is okay, but anything over is now a problem to public safety. You may think it can't get any worse, but it does. Now, state governments are making firearms illegal simply because they look like a semi-automatic or military-style firearm. So here you are, a licensed law-abiding shooter with a bolt-action, legally owned, registered firearm that you now have to surrender to police as it is deemed illegal because it's black and some bureaucrat thinks it resembles an AK-47. These laws and regulations are done under the guise of public safety, but they come at the expense of those law-abiding people who own the firearm type now banned or reclassified and have been doing the right thing for many years. So how does any of this add to public safety? We ask ourselves the same question because there is simply no evidence to back it up. We are well behind countries like New Zealand and Canada, which take a different approach. They don't register long arms at all, which was our approach prior to 1996. What they found was firearms registries are extremely costly and don't do anything for public safety. They also don't prohibit semi-automatic firearms. If you love government control and regulation and you want the government in your life, you need to become a law-abiding shooter. If you love... I said that again too. But with all this legislation, regulation and red tape, we still have lots of gun crime. The fact remains that no amount of laws and regulation will stop those who don't care about the law. Those who commit crimes with firearms aren't worried about barrel lengths, magazine capacity, or the registration or safekeeping of their firearms. So what does it all achieve? In my eyes, it achieves nothing. It only hinders those like me and us up the front here who do the right thing and go to the trouble of getting a firearms licence and then registering our firearms so that we don't break the law and then risk a heavy punishment. I'm going to leave you with a final thought. It's a very old saying, often used in the gun control debate. And it's when you outlaw guns, only the outlaws will have guns. Thank you.